Sean, now that we've had a little bit of time to digest AJ Dybantsa choosing BYU basketball as the #1 recruit in all the land, it's settling in to a degree, but we're still kind of in this euphoric mentality. How are you seeing this from your national perspective as BYU basketball continues to grow under Kevin Young?
Last week there was a 7.0 earthquake off the coast of California. That's pretty much the shake that just happened in the world of college basketball. And I tell you what, because there's a lot of ways that we're going to talk about this. I'm sure we're going to ask more questions about this. But in today's college basketball era, there's a couple of things that have to happen. One is your NIL and your collective have to be good enough that you can pay at a high rate. Like there's no doubt that there are some decisions that are made for college that are solely based on the amount of money that a player can get. I've talked to numerous college coaches that say the first meeting with a lot of recruits, they take out their cell phone, they slide across, and they go, "That's the NIL that we have to offer you." The other aspect of it is the developmental aspect of it. And if you can sell players on the idea that you can get them to what their ultimate goal is, and that you understand the pathway to get there, that's another great way of getting recruits, especially if you don't have the dollar value. Now, if you have both, you get this. And I think what this is, and this is KY, as AJ would call him. KY new for a couple weeks here, but KY and his background. And from my sources, there were numerous players, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, that talked about what he meant to them during the recruiting process. And for AJ, that's who he is. Like when you watch him play and the uniqueness of how he plays. Paul Biancardi and I were talking, and Paul said, listen, we can talk about Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper and all those guys. If AJ was in this year's recruiting class and he was playing in college basketball right now, he'd be the #1 pick in the NBA draft.
Wow.
Wild, right?
Okay, so, and he still obviously has to wait now to be able to start that clock in that window. But that's the type of player. We're talking about a generational, transcendent player that has aspirations to be the very best at his craft at the next level. I mean, you look at how he answered Stephen A. Smith's question of what NBA teams do you want to play for, and he said the Spurs or the Magic. Like, that's not the normal answer, but he's not the normal basketball player. He's like, I want to play with Victor Wembanyama. I want to play with the guards that are in Orlando. And his game is going to translate really well. But what this has done now is it's put everybody on notice. Coach Pope and I talked about it for a long time when Coach was there. The idea of a BYU basketball player. What does that basketball player look like? What is that? You know, the faith, obviously, very important to BYU. And sometimes that was a hurdle and an obstacle to get players that are not of faith. Then on the flip side of it, you know, the idea of being a pro from BYU. Can you accomplish that on a consistent basis? Well, getting AJ does all of that. I mean, it proves that the hire of Kevin Young has expanded the reach of BYU. It has thrown a larger net of where BYU can go and recruit, who they can go get, and subsequently, the ripple effect of this earthquake is going to be residual. Now, who comes with them? That's going to be part of it. Who sees this that's a younger recruit in the following classes of, 2026, 2027, and go, yeah, I mean, if AJ saw that as a place to go, maybe I should see that as a place to go. And I think that the two things that I talked about, what did I not mention off the top as far as how players look at things, whether it's financial or development? Brand. Brand is having less of a value than ever before. You cannot simply recruit on brand and brand alone. Now, if you have a brand that has development and has NIL, well, then you're in a really good spot. But no longer is this the case when you look at exposure in which kids get at the collegiate basketball level and the number of opportunities to play on major television games. Okay, do you understand that our programming department today is probably in conversations with the Big 12 about next season already?
Yeah, right?
They should be.
Like, I'm not joking. You may think that I'm joking. I'm not. ESPN events, everybody that runs, BD Global, that runs a lot of those MTEs or one-off games in Las Vegas, Intersport, all of these different entities that put on major events. Jimmy V Classic in New York. Is it out of the realm of possibility that we're going to see BYU in that next year? No. We very much so can, because you have a made-for-television star that is a box office brand name. And now people will want to see him. And so how do you expose him? How do you challenge him? How does the schedule come together in order to make it successful going into next year? All of those things are vitally important.
What does BYU need to do on the court to continue to recruit at this level too? Because to me, there's two things. There's one, it's what you are off the court, and BYU setting up pro, but with all these NBA-influenced staffers on the coaching staff, nutrition, mental strength, video, all this stuff, they have NBA influence. But what does BYU need to do on the court to continue to be an attractive team in the Big 12 and winning?
Well, winning obviously is a very important aspect of that, but I also think it's stylistically. Can players see themselves playing in a style that is going to be advantageous for their growth, not only there, an opportunity to be successful in college, but beyond? And I think that's what Kevin Young has brought to the table already. I mean, you look at AJ. Where does AJ thrive in scoring? He actually thrives in the mid-range area. Who does that sound like? Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant, yeah.
You know, now I'm not going to put it on this kid that he's going to be Kevin Durant right away. Like, I think that's unfair. You're talking about one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Now, could he potentially do that? I think the potential is there for him to be in that likeness when it's all said and done, and if he stays healthy and continues to grow and continues to mature. And I don't think that's overstating things when you watch him play. But he loves to work in that mid-range jump shot area. Kevin Young understands how to get players in that situation. I mean, he's done it time and time again. And so the blueprint is already there. So what allows you to continue to recruit at this level, guys, is if AJ comes in and thrives at that level. You know, Yegor's got to be able to continue to improve as the season goes along too, because you could be looking at Yegor, who's going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft, followed by AJ, who's going to be the #1 pick in the NBA draft a year from now. And what are we talking about? We're talking about now BYU's brand. More people being exposed to the brand that is BYU. Now, winning helps elevate all of that. So, in conference play, how competitive is this team going to be? When they get to the NCAA tournament, can they win, and then can they advance? I think that's for this year's team. That's going to be the question. The following year is, okay, you've got the star on the biggest of stage. Is he going to shine the brightest? Because the expectation level isn't just, you know, hey, I hope we make the NCAA tournament. It's you better make the NCAA tournament. You better be wearing a home color uniform. And you better advance at least into the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. And I think if all those things start to happen, what you start to line up is that third area. I mean, all of us that are here, we know the brand of BYU, right? I've been there a ton. And I've seen the fans, and I've seen the Rock, and I know how they pack that place and how special it is. There's not many environments in college basketball that sell out on a consistent basis like they do at BYU. And so as more people get exposed to that, I think that only benefits. This is why the move to the Big 12 was so important. Make no mistake about it, if you were in the WCC, this might be a really hard get still. I don't know if you land AJ if you're in the WCC. But the defenses and the quality of opponent, the exposure and who you see in the Big 12 on a night in and night out basis allows this type of thing to happen.
ESPN Sean Farnham is on BYU Sports Nation. Okay, Sean, I know you're going to be asked about this a million times if you haven't already been by all of your cohorts and people that come up and talk to you, but naturally everyone wants to know what in the world is happening at BYU. So how do you answer that question in relation to what is happening with BYU basketball right now?
Well, people ask me all the time, how does the NIL come together for BYU? Fellas, it's really simple. Sell more Cougar Tails. I just keep selling Cougar Tail. And I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I don't understand why people don't get it. No, what's happening is this. You have an athletic director that's committed to winning. You have a fan base that's committed to supporting winning. You have a student body that shows up every single game, really for almost every single sport across the board. And the environment, when you take a recruit on campus and all of a sudden you show them what you're working with, it's an awe factor. And I think that more and more people are starting to see that. And so when all of those things come together, then you have the opportunity to have the success that the football team had throughout the course of this season. You have the opportunity for the basketball team to recruit at a level in which it never has before, and that it will continue to try to build off of. And again, I don't think that KY is like, okay, we got AJ, we're done now. Like when you hit the transfer portal this year for BYU, how appealing will it be to play with AJ?
Holy cow.
So it's not just about the high school kids. It's about those guys that are going to jump in the transfer portal and they're going to say, man, so I can play for a coach that understands how to create a pro environment, prepare you like a pro, to get you to be a pro, to achieve your ultimate goals. And I'm going to play with the face of college basketball next season. And every game that I take the floor, there's going to be 20 to 30 NBA scouts watching us. Like, how appealing will that be for high-level transfers? So it's not just about who in the high school ranks is going to follow, but who in the transfer portal is going to see this. And so, again, that earthquake that I talked about at the start, it's just beginning for BYU. And buckle up, Cougar fans, because it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
What do you make of BYU's team this year so far?
I think it's a good team. I think it's an elite level team. No, I don't. And when you look at the Big 12, I think there's a little bit of a shakeup in the conference right now and trying to figure out, like, I think Iowa State's the best team in the conference. That's easy to say that they're a tip-in away from being the number one ranked team in the country. Had Auburn not had that tip-in in Maui, they'd be undefeated in number one. I think their backcourt is sensational, and I think the addition of Joshua Jefferson, who was the newcomer of the week for the Big 12 this past week, has been outstanding and adds another versatile scorer into their lineup and can stretch you into the corner. I was never a believer that Kansas was the number one team in the country. I think they're really good. I think Arizona's struggles are legitimate. But I think as you look at this team, Yegor got off to a great start. But he's going to have to do it against more physical teams that are going to get into him on a consistent basis. And I think that growth and that development, that's the next evolution of his step in order to achieve at a high level. And so I'll be interested to see, because how he goes and how he develops, I think, is going to take a lot of pressure off of everybody else on this roster and will allow this team to be more successful in conference play. But the depth of the Big 12 is there. I mean, as you saw West Virginia knock off Arizona in the battle for Atlantis. They're better than people thought. You know, I think Arizona State is a lot better than people thought. And I told you guys this, I think, at Big 12 Media Days, when I saw the media poll that had Arizona State at 12, I said they could be this year's BYU. Meaning that there's no chance they're finishing 12th. They're going to finish a lot higher. They're not going to necessarily win the conference championship, but they defend. They've got a lot of talent. That freshman class that Bobby Hurley brought in is really, really good. The key in the Big 12 this year, like it's going to be in the SEC, is how you handle your losses. Because you will get losses, and you will probably lose back-to-back games. So when you lose back-to-back games, how do you handle those losses and understand that you're still a very good basketball team, and get back on the right track as soon as you possibly can. And we've seen that already for a couple teams in the conference. And obviously Kansas, after back-to-back losses, is going to have to do the same thing. But Baylor's not as good defensively as they've been in the past. They're a little smaller at the guard position, and I think that's something that in a matchup against BYU, maybe something that they can exploit. So it's going to be an interesting ride. But I think this BYU team, if I realistically looked at it right now, is probably in the middle of the Big 12 this season.
The great Sean Farnham of ESPN is on BYU Sports Nation. Okay, let's talk about somebody specifically on this year's roster, Sean, and that is Cannon Catchings. He's projected late first round, early second round. How does the news of AJ Dybantsa playing at BYU next year, do you think, impact a guy like Cannon Catchings?
Well, I think here's the thing with him. You have to wait to see how the draft process goes. And I would encourage him to go through the draft process and get as much intel as you can. I am one of those that says very simply, if you are guaranteed a first round pick, if a team sits there and goes, hey, we're going to take you at 28, then you go. Like, if you're guaranteed to be a first round pick, you go. If you're not, and there's no guarantee there, and they're like, you could go between here and here, then you got to put a pin in it and you got to really do a deep dive. And I think this is where the experience and the intel, this is the other aspect of Kevin Young, is you're going to be able to get the intel, and the kids are going to trust the intel that you're giving them based on his history, right? It's not a college coach saying, hey, this is what's best for you. You should come back. However, with AJ's arrival, you sit there and go, okay, well, if I'm a fringe guy now and I'm not guaranteed, and nobody has made a commitment at the back end of the NBA draft to draft me between 20 and the end of the first round, well, then I should come back, because by coming back, I'm now going to be able to have probably a better quality of shot. I'm going to end up probably having a more efficient season because of the scouting report and how teams are going to defend AJ. I think that opens up an opportunity for someone like him to thrive even more so next year. And I think so much of when you look at the NBA, guys misunderstand what it takes to get to the league. It's not just about scoring. If it was about scoring, go look at the national leaders in scoring and figure out whether those guys are going to get drafted, and most of them aren't. It's about the efficiency. It's about the size. It's about the development. And in particular, as you step up in level, it's about the defense. Can you defend your position, or are you a liability out on the court? Like 90% of the players that get drafted in the NBA draft are role players. And I think a lot of fans expect that to be different. They're not all superstars. They're not all starters. They're guys that are role players. And if you thrive in your role, you can have a really long NBA career. AJ's a star. Like, he's a bona fide star. But most players aren't. And so as you go through that process, you have to understand it. Have I positioned myself, and do I understand exactly what I need to do to extend the length of my career in the NBA as long as I possibly can? Players that struggle when they make the transition to the next level are players that believe that they're supposed to be stars when they're not. And they don't understand how to accept their roles. And in large part, we can understand that based on the fact that when they were in high school, they were the elite, they were the best of the best. When they went to college, there was the expectation. Everybody was talking about going to the NBA draft and all this. And I saw it a ton of times with my teammates at UCLA. And then you go, okay, but at the next level, you're not the star, dude. Like, you're the guy that has to come off the bench and perform. You're not the guy that they're going to count on every single night to score 20. There may be a game or two where you do that. But, like, if you look at the guys that had longevity in which I played with, like Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes was an All-American football player, could have gone to the NFL. Matt Barnes was an elite-level high school basketball player that came to UCLA to play basketball. As he progressed throughout the course of his career at UCLA, like, you thought, okay, he's starting, he's putting up good numbers. Well, for him to survive in the league, he had to do all the dirty work. It wasn't about being an elite scorer or anything like that. Like, if you think of Matt Barnes, what do you think of? Toughness, rebounding, defense, a little bit of attitude. You know, Earl Watson, another player I played with, 14 years in the NBA, 14 years. And when he came to UCLA, nobody would have thought that. But what made him that? Well, he outworked everybody. He was a good teammate. He defended. He was a pass-first point guard that understood how to get the ball into people's hands on a consistent basis where they wanted it so that they could be successful. Not him, they could be successful. He was selflessness in the game. And I think that's where a lot of people that get drafted, in particular in the NBA, and again, 90% of people that get drafted in the NBA draft are that. Very few are actually stars. So with that being said, when are you ready to go? First round pick, you go. Second round pick, you come back and you give it another go with one of the baddest dudes on the planet next year.
Sean, great stuff. Let's finish with this. If you had to pick a favorite Cougar Tail flavor, which way are you leaning? Just out of sheer morbid curiosity. The traditional maple, or do you like the chocolate, vanilla, strawberry? I'm just asking.
We have additional flavors? We have additional flavors.
There have been additional flavors.
Indeed.
When did this start?
Last 2 years? Yeah.
There have been.
Hold on. I did the whole thing last year where I went to the making of the Cougar Tail, and all they had was maple.
That day, it's specialty. You got to come in on the right weekend, I guess.
Okay, so what are we going to have, fellas, on the 31st of December?
You coming for ASU? Big 12 opener?
What are we going to have on the 31st of December?
Let's put in a request.
Do you need us to talk to some people? You want chocolate, strawberry?
We're going to put in a request to Tyson Jex for you. You want to try chocolate?
Chocolate?
I would like to try the chocolate. Okay. I would like to try something different. Because right now it's only maple bar for me. There's only been maple bar for me. I have no point of reference except for the maple bar. But I'll tell you what. I'm going to be there to spend my New Year's Eve in Provo.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fantastic. That's going to be a big time game. And I mentioned it earlier in this interview. Like, ASU's playing good basketball. Are they great? No. But are they good? Yes. And are they physical? And are they defensive minded? Yes. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to let you know right now, we're going to bring Paul Biancardi on for a nice 30-second rip on AJ.
Love it.
To give his thoughts on AJ during the course of that game. Because, we talk in the world of college basketball, we say sometimes it's really hard to build stars. No, it's not. We already know where the star of next year's college basketball is going. Now we got to sell him as much as possible and educate as many people as possible about how bad he is on the basketball court and how amazing he's going to be for college basketball next season.
Let's go. Chocolate Cougar Tails on New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve with the three of us.
Okay.
Let's go.
Question. Are you guys? Who's going to be with me? Anybody going to be at the table with me on that day?
I believe I will be sitting next to you. Yes.
Yeah, I'll be in the studio here.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Now, tux or no tux?
Tux, why not?
Send it, man. Full send.
I mean, okay. I'm just thinking. Now, will there be students there because it's break? When does the football team play?
December 28th. So they'll be back. Fans will be back.
Okay. All right.
I'm
thinking. I got a lot to think about. But this chocolate cougar tail thing is like.
Oh, then we ended this interview the appropriate way.
hey, fellas. Happy holidays to you both. I hope you guys get a lot of time with your family. It's always great to join you on your show and talk a little Cougar basketball. And I look forward to doing it throughout the course of the Big 12 season.
Appreciate you,
Can't
Sean.
wait, Sean.
Merry Christmas, brother.
Thanks,
Talk to you
man.
soon.